Hello, and welcome to the Kink Perspective. My name is Chris. I'm a psychotherapist and consultant. On this episode, I'm going to talk about BDSM and trauma. More specifically, through kink, how we can explore trauma in a safe manner. I write and talk about trauma quite often, especially on my social media profiles or in talks that I give. It's something that I specialize in, and I've helped a lot of people work through and manage trauma in their daily lives. One thing we have to all keep in mind, trauma is not something you're diagnosed with. You don't go to the doctor and have him tell you you have trauma. Trauma is the result of something that's happened to you or that you've experienced. So how do we go about exploring our traumas and starting to find ways to mend it through kink? Well, somatic practices have the potential to nurture our nervous systems as an alternative healing path. Kink can be seen as physical, intimate, powerfully erotic, or just a common practice which many people find healing enough. There is a strength in being able to reclaim parts of your sexuality that have been buried or felt withheld due to your past trauma or traumas. Some of those traumas can be quite complex. So, kink is interdisciplinary, and therefore the actual practice varies from everyone who participates in it. As we all know, there's really no BDSM Bible or guidelines that we can follow. There are rules that some of us, or many of us in the BDSM community, do adhere to for safety and security protocols. But for the rest, each person kind of makes up their rules inside of their relationship independently. So we need to understand this further. That's because kinks come in many forms, from suspension to rope, role play, physical restriction, power exchange, administration of pain and impact, age play. And these are just a few. In other words, there's no way to be kinky in finding your own path to what you like in the BDSM or lifestyle community. That's how you've got to center in on it. Mental health providers have historically pathologized kinky behavior as part of the sexual paraphilic disorder range. There is research, though, that shows that people who practice in the BDSM community, they're less neurotic, they're more extroverted, they're open to new experiences, they're more conscientious, and the best part is they're also rejection sensitive, and they have a higher subjective well-being than non-kinky people. I think that's more so because of the fact we're really willing when we're starting to meet with someone, talk about things we like in a manner that's open and free without fear of judgment. One study out of the US found that BDSM identified couples reported less stress and anxiety as well as increased intimacy following their play. At its core, though, kink is about the ability to delve into the deepest depths of your desires and connect with others on a raw and humanistic level. It can be seen in shadow work, finding the strength in submission and embodiment in dominance. This form of connection takes vulnerability, takes trust, takes a lot of effort, and it takes intentional communication. In that understanding, there's always stages we have to go through. And for a trauma survivor, we have to understand the predictability of negotiation. For survivors of sexual assault, profound reclamation can be found through the negotiation, execution, and aftercare of a scene. There have been correlations drawn between the stages of trauma, healing therapies, and these three phases of a kink scene. Phase 1 of trauma work with a mental health provider is about skills building. You work on creating a stable coping mechanism and boundaries for yourself around the triggers that might set you off or that might upset you at any given moment. This ties to the first step of the kink scene, negotiation. You figure out with your partner what everyone's boundaries are, what kind of play you want to participate in, what your safe words and actions are going to be, what safety protocols you have in place. A lot of planning goes into a scene, and this allows for survivors to have a sense of predictability of what will happen, whereas with a traumatic event, it's completely unpredictable. Through this process, we can kind of rewire the trauma that's happened. Working through trauma in therapy is a safe and contained way to access healing. Similar to the play of a kink scene, BDSM play is a chance to experience pain, fear, excitement, arousal, adrenaline, in a consensual way. Also, in an environment where we can slow the scene or stop it completely at a moment's notice. You get to decide what type of scene you want to do, whether it's suspension, needle play, edge play, age play. The great thing about kink is it creates a space where people choose to be powerful. They choose to experience or administer pain and experience being cared for afterward. This consensual aspect of play allows our bodies to rewire our brain and nervous system's responses. Building a new, positive, and consensual experience can heal as well as overwrite some of the traumatic tones that we experience when we live our daily lives. Through this, we can find a way to make play pleasurable again. There is little to no research on survivors of sexual assault experiencing pleasure, intimacy, and the connection after trauma. Many survivors describe feeling lost in their attempts to re-navigate their sexuality after a trauma. Rewiring a connection to pleasure will look different for each person. The inclusion of kink and BDSM is simply one avenue. Adults don't often have the opportunity to experience playfulness. It's something more seen as we grow out of from childhood into adolescence and then early adulthood. However, playful pleasure offers us a space to heal. So, what exactly is trauma play? Trauma play is an umbrella term for different types of play. It can include age play or breath play, restraints, or consensual, non-consensual play, even something more heavy such as incest play or even race play. Trauma play should be approached with care. Even among experts, it can be quite controversial. While some professionals believe trauma play has its benefits, others warn that trauma play can have an emotional and physical risk. Some experts advise against reenacting past traumas, because instead of starting the healing process, it can further push someone towards their pain or into a deeper regression. Even for participants who find trauma play enjoyable in some circumstances, it can be painful or traumatizing if there's not enough of high-level trust between yourself and your partner. To those unfamiliar with BDSM, trauma play may sound problematic and even detrimental. It includes some of the most controversial types of play. For example, some people assume that anyone who would participate in age play or consensual and non-consensual types of play are just undercover predators. While they're predators in every community, individuals who partake in rape play, for example, may be less likely to be predators and more so be partners who are willing to engage in heavy levels of trust to help their partner overcome some of these traumas. Some research shows that the rate of assault appeared at a smaller rate for individuals who didn't participate in this kind of play in the first place. So what are the benefits of trauma play? With all of these caveats, why participate in trauma play in the first place? Some may simply enjoy the humiliation aspect or the increased powerlessness of the types of play they're involved in. Using trauma play can be a way to exaggerate the aspects of BDSM that interest participants in all of their play. This type of play is certainly not for everyone, but for some, it can be a very powerful healing technique that allows people to work through traumatic experiences in a way that allows them control in what happens. We need to understand the important difference between trauma reenactment and trauma play. Trauma reenactment is when people find themselves stuck in a repeating loop of the toxic events or relationship patterns that they've experienced. This is a result of an unhealed trauma. Trauma play, conversely, allows people to work through their trauma by being able to reenact it on their own terms, thereby manipulating the traumatic event that they have experienced rather than falling victim to an old pattern that keeps repeating itself. This can be transformational as well as empowering. Some individuals who partake in trauma play state that it allows them to feel more in control of their own oppression. This allows them to have less of a physical fear response when they do experience oppression in their everyday lives. Trauma play can also be helpful because of its role-playing aspects. One commonly recommended book among therapists, The Body Keeps the Score, has an entire chapter dedicated to how theater, for example, can help people heal from trauma. In drama therapy, people are able to manipulate traumatic events that they've gone through and change the narrative to give themselves more power. There are many parallels with how people use BDSM trauma play and other types of artistic therapies. For example, when during art therapy, people can paint out and control the scene that they've experienced through an expression of color. This is also seen when we do traumatic reenactments through puppetry, creative writing, or even interpretive dance. One major aspect about BDSM, though, is when we look at aftercare and the repair it helps and causes. The final stage of our trauma therapy is the integration, similar to aftercare in a kink scene. Using the skills built up from the previous stages, trauma survivors are equipped with a safety plan and a deeper understanding of their own trauma. During aftercare, you check in with one another on how the scene went, what worked, what didn't, how you're feeling, what you might want to try at a higher or lower intensity the next time you get together, and offer care through snuggling, light touch, affirmations, or even more. Kink helps complete the stress response cycle for those who are stuck in an activated state of fight-flight response. It allows the body to release back into deactivation and restoration mode. The tight line of trust and communication between partners allows for us and those walls of trauma that we've built up to slowly start to come down, especially when we do this in a safe environment. While trauma causes a rupture with no repair, aftercare in a kink scene allows for that repair in experiencing consensual pain and submission or intensity to be done in a manner in which we are in control of. So, when we're looking at this, we have to understand that BDSM participants are not especially likely to be mentally ill or be suffering from some sort of mental distress, nor are they more likely than the general population to have suffered from a trauma. In some reported cases, they've actually suffered less. Nonetheless, BDSM has a number of benefits that can help people cope with trauma. It can help build trust, explore and control tolerance levels, help people work through past traumas. When undertaken in the right environment, especially with care and knowledge, it can help people heal. Not only are we healing in the moment, but our portals and our receptors are open to heal our past selves, repair places where the traumatic energy may remain stuck in the body. When you discover where traumatic energy is stored in your body, you can focus your kinky efforts there. For example, if you struggle to communicate boundaries because of a past trauma, having a dominant explore breath play with you could be an area of focus, or releasing a scream during an intense impact scene could discharge the trauma by completing the stress response cycle. There is creativity in the form of kink play. Through positive and intentional dynamics between a dominant and their submissive, healing is possible. While this may not be for everyone, it is a healthy form of expression to work through the trauma someone has experienced. Until next time, be safe and stay kinky.